Welcome back to the Sesame Spectacle podcast. Today we have a guest, which is very exciting. Always exciting to have a guest in any relation to Sesame. And my name is Sky.
It's your boy, Neil.
And our guest today is SeaWorld Performer Alex.
Yes, welcome
Welcome,
Alex to
Alex.
the
This is exciting.
podcast.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be here.
Yes.
How you doing?
welcome.
It's been good. It's been good. We're filming auditions. We're doing the stuff, doing the performer stuff. And
Awesome.
now I get to talk about one of the best jobs ever. So I'm so happy to be here.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I want to start with asking just a general, how did you get into entertainment, and then a little bit in how it led you towards Sesame.
Right. So yeah, it's such a funny story because I did not purposely end up as a performer. When I was in high school and stuff, I was always doing, shows and the school shows and all of that great stuff. And then, oh gosh, it's so funny. I've always loved I love novelty performances, I guess. Disney on Ice, Sesame Street Live.
Yeah.
Any type of live show with characters. I remember growing up with those Disney sing-along tapes. So
I love those.
oh, the best. And I really just was obsessed with them. I wasn't so much into the characters per se as if they were real beings, but I loved finding out how this thing was done by a human. So I used to look for Disney on Ice programs because Disney on Ice would come to our hometown all the time. And I would always look for the wires. I was always looking for, how does that character see? How does that puppet come alive? And that was always something I loved as a kid. And then now let's go back to high school, and I was always doing theater because it was just something I enjoyed. I never really wanted to be an actor. I still don't really know if that's necessarily my path, but I really enjoyed it. And then I got into college and I started to get into more directing and production and how that kind of stuff happens. But then I graduated college and I just had a liberal arts degree. And I was thinking, okay, what do I do with this? My family wanted me to graduate college. They didn't care with what I did with my life after. And it was right after COVID and I was going through a breakup and I was like, I think I'm just going to move somewhere. And I thought I'm going to move to Chicago and maybe try to get into some theaters or do stuff there. And then I thought, well, my family would never let me move to Chicago. They've never been to Chicago and they're letting their only son out for the first time.
Right.
Let me move there. And I said, well, Orlando might be good because we'd vacation in Orlando and I did the Disney college program and I was like, that might be good. So I told them the idea and they were for it. So I moved to Orlando, not really knowing what I was going to do. I got a job working over at Disney World at Restaurantosaurus. And that was an extremely fun time. Restaurantosaurus is a dinosaur-themed restaurant in Animal Kingdom. And we were all paleontologists and we were selling burgers to raise funds for more dino digs. And me being, having this high school performance background, I would always play into that and give guest tours of everything. And they were just about to make me a trainer there when I saw that SeaWorld was having auditions. Now, we were kind of coming out of COVID. People were still wearing masks, but it was okay to walk around. Right. And people were doing auditions through like this online. You'd submit stuff virtually. And I was always kind of interested to see what a theme park audition would be like. And when I saw SeaWorld was doing one in person, I immediately signed up and went to this thing. And I was super relaxed and kind of chill about it because I was like, well, I'm not going to get anything. I just want to see what this audition is like because I'd love to direct day. And how do they do this? How do you do it on such a large scale? And what are they looking for? And that audition was crazy because they started with the most complicated dance I have ever done. And I am not a dancer. And I was thinking like, oh, SeaWorld, they have Sesame Street characters. How complicated could this thing be? And it was like this ridiculous, like it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. And I had this thick mask on and it was bad. But in the middle of your dance, you were supposed to do an animation. And I remembered from clown school, which was something I did, the concept of miming, right? And they would always teach us to kind of use weights, right? So pretend you're holding a light rock or a heavier one. What is a really heavy one?
Right.
And the thing was, it's Christmas morning. What's the first thing you do? And I was thinking, okay, I'll make a snowball. So I did my dance, and then we get into the animation. And I was thinking about everything. And I think they noticed the different weights, and I was the only one. I think I forgot to, everyone else was like taking their pajamas off and putting their clothes on. I didn't do that. I guess my character just ran outside naked or something. I don't know. But I immediately got to the snowball thing, and I thought that was pretty good. And then I went back, then you could do the dance again, and you're like, okay, let's do this. But now you're out of breath because you just did the animation.
Yeah.
Anyway, I did that, and I remember my number, because when you do an audition, you get a little number, a sticker. Mm-hmm. And I remember my number fell off, and I verbally said something like, oh, I really lost that. Or I said like, oh, I lost that. And I was referring to the sticker that fell. And I think the choreographer was like, no, but you got it at the end. And I didn't know what she meant by that. I realized later that she was responding to the dancing. I assumed. Yeah. So we stood in a line, and then you stand in a line and you smile, which is so funny because you're standing in the line, but you just did a huge dance with a mask and you're sweaty and you're like,
yeah,
it's terrifying. And then I think I read something because it was Christmas, so we were reading for like elf stuff. And then it was over and I just forgot about it. And I just remember thinking like, that was so cool. The problem is that I kind of fell in love with it. I was like, oh wait, this was really fun. I'm not done with performing. I thought after high school I was over it.
Yeah.
And I remember being at Restaurantosaurus and I was on my lunch and I got a call from SeaWorld and they said, hey, we would love it if you could come in and be a performer. We'll start you as a Christmas elf and then we'll see if you can do the Sesame stuff later. And I just remember this huge feeling coming over me because it was such a hard day that day. And I was taking out the garbage and I remember like the garbage bag broke and there was Coca-Cola running down my arm and it was gross. And then someone's telling you, you don't have to do this anymore. You can make people happy. So that was the best. And I remember my first day was really all about Christmas elfing, which was, kind of just ad-lib exercises and stuff like that. So I did that for a while and it was very nice. I enjoyed it. It was fun. You got to make some magical moments with the kids and the adults. But this is a Sesame podcast, so we'll focus on that. My first day of Sesame, I remember, I have to be careful with what I say now, but I remember going into a room and seeing all the characters and just thinking, oh my gosh, I'm doing it. It was like a moment of, oh, wait, I love this stuff. I forgot stuff. And I started to think about Disney on Ice, and I started to think about Sesame Street Live, and I started to think about all that. And unintentionally, I made my childhood dreams come true. Yeah. I started doing things that in 4th grade and 5th grade, I fell in love with.
Did you grow up watching the Sesame Street show?
Yeah, no.
You didn't? So what was your first introduction to like the franchise?
Yeah, I was actually
was it Sesame Street Live?
Yes, actually. I was as a really little kid, I was a Barney kid.
Yes.
Yeah. Love Barney. All for Barney.
Yes. Same here. That's who I was. That was my first love.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an
Mhm.
amazing guy.
Yeah.
And Mary Poppins. I really loved Mary Poppins. In fact, this was I always keep this with me. She's all dusty now, but this was my Mary Poppins from when I was
Oh wow.
Oh, wow.
and I always keep her right over here. We're in my room right now. I always keep her right over there so I can remember that. But yeah, so I do remember in kindergarten, I got to see Sesame Street live. For the life of me, I don't remember the show, but I remember that big V Entertainment, how that old set with the big street lamp,
Oh, yeah.
on the
Yep.
side,
hmm
the Sesame backgrounds. And I
Right.
remember being very enthralled by it. And I got a program, and it really left an impact on me. And the thing that I remembered most was how the characters moved. And I remember going home, and I remember my movements. I couldn't help it. It was so fun to be so exaggerated. So I remember my mom said something, and I was like, geez, or stuff like that. And it was me mimicking what I saw. And that was pretty much it for Sesame until I got to be in about 5th grade. And I found a show called Avenue Q, which was a very inappropriate show for a 5th grader to enjoy.
Yeah.
But I fell in love with puppetry through that. And this is when YouTube actually showed you recommended videos based on what you just watched instead of random stuff. So because I would watch those videos, a bunch of Muppet stuff would come up. And I remember through that Muppet phase that I went through, Sesame Street videos would start popping up. And that's when I got into, I think at that time it was still called the Children's Workshop. And I was as a 5th grader, I was so interested in how Sesame Workshop helped children from all over. Obviously grow smarter, kinder, and stronger.
Right.
hmm
But the outreach that they had, and that was the first time I was like, oh, this is what a nonprofit is, and I can be a part of this. And I really fell in love with that. And through that searching, I remember there was a video online of a show at Sesame Place. And it was the Count singing bones, 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 bones inside of you.
Right.
Countdown to Halloween. Yes.
Yes. And I was a 5th grader. And I remember watching this. And I felt like I had to watch it in secret so my friends didn't laugh at me. But I remember watching that and just looking at how is he moving his mouth? How are those movements so fluid and clean? I was really interested in it. And then, of course, the song's just very catchy. All of Count's songs, best songs.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then it kind of all faded away until I got to see the character room again, and I got to meet all my friends again, and I fell in love with it. And forever, Sesame will always be a part of me in a way that nobody can ever take away. I am so honored to play such a small part in bringing these characters to life.
Yeah.
In a meaningful way for families and guests, and it is genuinely an honor. It's past a job at sometimes. Yeah,
well, it really is true that every individual person that's part of the whole team, there's such a great deal of importance to every individual role because it all has to come together.
Yeah.
So I imagine the feeling of realizing that you become a part of it is moving. Once you said that you've sort of in a way been reunited with your friends, and you realize that you've come full circle. What was it like when you or at what point did you realize that a lot of what you were going to be doing and a lot of the people you'd be interacting with were like young kids and making memories for them? And I'm curious what you thought, how far in advance you knew that. You talked about doing the audition and not knowing where it would go. Was that something you ever looked forward to specifically, or was it just something you hadn't thought about?
No, I mean, when they first trained me, they made it very clear that I would get to hang out with my friends in a meet and greet context and not a show context. So
Right.
they made it very clear to me that my dancing was not quite there, and that's okay. But I would be purposely, meeting families, and it's wonderful. I mean, it was such an honor. I remember my first couple of days, my first, oh gosh, it had to be for a few months. When I first started, it was still COVID, so people weren't allowed to touch characters yet. So we had boxes, and that was actually very helpful, because what it taught me as a performer was how to tell. Obviously, as a character performer, you are telling a story, but what that taught me was how to tell a story that left a punch for that guest to remember. And it didn't give me the luxury of the high five, hug, kiss, and then picture. I don't know what character would do this, but picture. It really taught me about storytelling and how to do that with these guys. And then obviously when we were able to get back into hugs, that did change things a little bit. And I have met so many great kids, and so many awesome parents that love this show and purposely come there. I mean, obviously, with Sesame, a lot of people don't know that it's at SeaWorld. So a lot of the people that we get are just people who are like, oh yeah, and there's so-and-so character. Okay, I guess we'll do that. That'll take up some time.
Right.
But once in a while, you get to meet families that come to see you. Right. And there is no better feeling. Because they've been thinking about that for a long time. And really what character performing is quickly identifying what somebody needs and being that for them. You should know your basics. You should understand that character, their likes, their dislikes, their needs, their values, what motivates them. You need to have all that information. But once you have it, your job is to identify and do it fast. And then hopefully be everything that they need, whether that be a kid or an adult. And if you'd like, do you want to hear some stories, some guest stories?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. My next question was going to be about, whether it was your first day or second day or whatever, what some of your first impressions were, your first memories of, that stood out to you.
I'll say this as a general umbrella. I am now so proud to say that I am a character performer in Orlando. So I am a character performer I get to perform with all sorts of different types of friends and different styles of friends.
Oh yeah, that's
some of this stuff is just general, just putting that out there. But Sesame related stories, well, I will say with character performing in general, people think it's the heat that gets you. It's the breathing. So my first couple of days of doing this job, I was just trying to stay alive. I am not particularly fit. And my intent was, you have to be this character and you need to not die.
Right.
And
two very important things.
That was a little hard for me to find at first, because when you first start, you want to be ridiculous and huge and doon, and that was when I didn't really understand the specific character that I was meeting greeting with. I thought this character was all over the place and goofy and silly. He wasn't. This character was actually very direct and very forward and was pretty chill. But I thought I had to be ridiculous. I was more like Wile E. Coyote or like a Looney Tunes type thing when I first started. So my first actual days were just stay alive.
Right.
But one day that I will never forget was I got to, after a while, I got approved into a different friend. And I got to hang out with Count Von Count. And he was so cool and so chill. Count Von Count, wonderful guy, great at counting. Don't wear any like buttons or anything around him, because he will just start counting and then you can't have a conversation. he's a mess. But one day I got to be with Count, and I'll never forget. There was this girl that came up, and she was wearing purple headphones, and she was wearing a Count Von Count shirt, and she had purple pants, and she was holding this Count stuffed animal that was so loved that it barely resembled Count. And I think she had a Count little figure in her hand too. And I was so excited for Count to be able to see her for the first time. And I remember the dad telling Count that this was the reason they came, and that she is Count's #1 fan. And the dad told her to say all these different facts to Count, which Count was like, yes, I remember that. And I loved it. But it was so funny because at that point, Count was not doing regular meet and greets. So the fact that it was my first day, and Count was just there hanging out, and we got to see Count's #1 fan.
Yeah.
It was so special. And this kid was just so wonderful and so sweet and so knowledgeable. And thankfully there was no one in line, so we got to Count pretty far, which is fun. Challenging for Count. He has 8 fingers, but still fair.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
The other, I have all sorts of cute little things that I've gotten over time from kids. I think this is supposed to be. This was a little. They never finished it, but this is a little birthday card that I got when it was my buddy Bert's birthday. I got this. It's a C for cookie.
Perfect.
And first of all, if my Sesame friends are watching, Sesame friends, thank you so much for giving these things to me to show on our platform. My Sesame friends being Cookie and Bert and all of them, they let me show these to you guys. But on the back it says, from your friend Katie, which I think is very sweet. I got all sorts of stuff here. I really love this one. Didn't they do something? Look at how good they colored in those lines.
Wow.
Is that not amazing? I mean, this was like...
That's impressive.
She had to be like maybe 5 or 6. And I mean, look at how good that is. And then the idea of merging the red and the yellow.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, perfect.
That's a pro right there.
I mean, like, that's really good, right? And then she wanted to give it to Big Bird. That's crazy. My favorite story to tell is one that I think about all the time. I was hanging out with Big Bird at the nest. And if any of you have been to SeaWorld Orlando, it's... The way it's built... you wouldn't think that a character meets there because it's very tiny. But Big Bird has his nest, and then there's a little thing in front of it for people to sit on, and then there's a little exit. And it was really, oh yeah, right there. And it was really, really busy that day. And Big Bird was doing his story time where he was, talking and read a story with the storyteller, Sesame Street. And we weren't going to do a meet and greet because it was sometimes if it's a little bit too extreme or if there's a parade, we'll not do it with management approval. And that was the case. But I remembered there was this one girl, and I don't know how old she was. I think she was roughly around my age. But she, I don't know the proper way to say this, but she was, she had the spirit of a little kid, and she was so sweet and so delightful. And her mother was with her and trying to calm her down at certain parts because she was just so excited at the story and so talkative with us. It was so sweet. And the story ended, and Big Bird left, and the storyteller came behind. And I remember thinking, we need to meet her. And it was just this voice in my head that said, we really need to see them because she was very sweet. And my storyteller came in and she was like, hey, they were wondering if you could, my storyteller came in and said, hey, she wanted to know if Big Bird could sign her book. So we signed the book. Big Bird signs the book. And Big Bird's looking through this book and he notices that the page had Big Bird stickers all over it. And when Big Bird turned the page, there was a page that had Elmo stickers all over it that was signed Elmo. We kept turning and realized that this person had made the autograph book and made each individual page for these characters to meet. So I made a call and we made sure all of the Sesame characters signed that book.
Wow.
Wow.
I remember thinking,
Amazing.
we still really need to meet this kid. Well, she wasn't a kid, but we need to meet this person. And my storyteller goes, would you hate, if Big Bird did a meet and greet with them? What do you think, Big Bird? And Big Bird was already thinking that, and
Right.
So Big Bird comes back out. The area had cleared except for them. My storyteller kept the area clear of any guests. So they made sure that no one else was getting in. The escort stuck with Big Bird, and Big Bird was able to focus on that kid. And it's the only reason we were able to do that is because my storyteller was awesome and did the dirty work of explaining that this is a special meet and greet. Please come back later. And that's very challenging with some of the guests, Big Bird got to spend time with this kid or this person. And they gave me, well, they didn't give it to Big Bird. They showed Big Bird this magazine. It's from 1991. And if you look, it says, look out for fun and memory book. And I was thinking, oh, how sweet. They have this wonderful book for us to look through. And this is story time with Big Bird. And I had no time rush, so I was ready to just sit, read the story with them. But then they started flipping the pages. And then they said, you see, Big Bird, this says dangerous. And then while looking at me, they recited this poem without looking at it. Then they turned the page. They went to this one, how to play. And this one isn't a story, it's literally just the directions for how to play this. And they said, see, Big Bird, how to play. And they blah, 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 and they were able to recite all of this. Wow, because it was in their memory. And I was thinking, wow, this is really cool. And Big Bird was all over it. Then they turned the page and they drew this.
Big Bird and Snuffy.
And Big Bird got really excited when he saw his pal Snuffy and his nest and the feathers. And this is how they took 2 pages and taped them together. And then their handprints. Then they turned the page and they showed me this picture of crowns. And Big Bird thought they were crowns too. And Big Bird, pretended he was a king and honored, this queen and didn't think much of it.
Mm-hmm.
As we went through, I saw that they were showing me, do you remember when you met C-3PO? And it's Big Bird 3PO. And then they said, do you remember when Maria was trying to fix this? And do you remember when you were talking to Cookie Monster and she was giving these wonderful descriptions? And obviously Big Bird remembers everything. He's 6, but he's very smart.
Oh, yeah.
And then she said, I want to give this to you. And she gave it to Big Bird. And when Big Bird went back, Big Bird was tired, he took a nap. But I took a look at this. And as I was flipping it, I was getting emotional because this girl loved this book. She memorized all the pages. She probably had it since it came out in 1999. And as I was flipping, I was looking at these crowns and I realized that they weren't crowns. They were Big Bird's handprints.
Yep.
And the fact that she wanted to give this to Big Bird, it just changed my life. So I took it and I kept it in this so that way, because I thought for sure she would want it back.
Mm-hmm.
I thought for sure I was going to get a letter saying, the mother of Brianna wants you to give this back. And I never did, but it's still in there and it's still safe just in case. But that is probably the best guest story that I ever had.
Wow.
And
That's hard to beat, I'd say.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story, because I see from time to time going to the theme park out here, kids bringing gifts for the characters and everything like that. And I do witness stories like that often. And hearing that from you is it's a special moment.
Yeah.
It's a special moment for these kids. And
Yeah.
what you do, you help bring their friends alive. Like you're their heroes. And you deserve all the praise for everything you did that day for that one special person.
But genuinely, it's not much. It is these very strong characters that were made that are so loved. And, I don't mean to be overly religious or anything like that, but, I personally believe that we are sort of like puppets for God. And in so many ways, this is very similar to that concept of no one knows it's me. There's no praise for me. And there shouldn't be, except for right now, I'm letting it go. But, there shouldn't be. It's these characters. And it's my job to look at a guest and say, what do you need? And that could go as far as, hey, what's up? Let's take a photo. It could go as far as what happened with me and Brianna. And sometimes it's realizing that a mother of a Make-A-Wish child is not ready to stop hugging you. And it is just your job to know the situation and be there for them. And I'm very thankful that for 3 years I've had a job that was all about healing children and adults. And I'm very thankful for it.
I think that's really well said. And I would imagine that something like that or an experience like that is something that you don't expect, when you get into, when you're doing that audition, is that, I'm sure that's not the type of memory or the type of story that you might see happening in the future. But it makes me think of, when I was very little and going to Sesame Place and having memories that are similar to that. I'm sure so many kids have, so many adults have. I mean, it's something that those small moments, they're so short, but I remember all of them.
Yeah.
And so many of them, I was as young as like 2-3 years old, and I vividly remember them all. And I think getting to see, I've always wondered the same thing, but to see what those experiences are like from the other side must be just overwhelming.
It's incredibly emotional. Even outside of the Sesame umbrella,
right?
There was a long time, as you know, Santa Claus is a very busy guy. He's all over the place, Sometimes he needs a little bit of help, and sometimes, believe it or not, his elves need just a little bit of help. Now, when you go to SeaWorld and you meet Santa Claus, you are talking to real, genuine Christmas elves. A lot of people wouldn't have you believe that. But they do travel by sleigh every day. They park on the roof of the stadium and they walk themselves downstairs. They say hello to the dolphins. They say hello to the belugas, and then they get to work. And they greet all of our guests at SeaWorld. And it's very nice of them to come by. It's a wonderful partnership. They get a little vacation. It's great. Once in a while, an elf calls out because they need to worry about a toy, or they need to worry about something that Santa's doing, or Mrs. Claus has cooked something that came to life and it's a whole mess, So they ask performers like myself to step in and help out. All that to say, one day I was hanging out with Santa's elves, and I remember feeling a sense of guilt. Because we would open up this door and Santa Claus would be there in a beautiful sleigh. He just flew in. And it was me who got to see the reactions on their faces, because I was the one that they were facing.
Right.
And I always felt a little bit of guilt for that. but also so honored to be able to watch this amazing kid just light up. And the world is challenging. The world is an extremely challenging place to be. Even for children, they're going through a lot. And being a kid is a lot, even if you're a kid that's able to go to SeaWorld. And to be able to have the experience of the mask being taken off of a child and just seeing pure joy, it doesn't get better. Yeah. It really does. Some of those faces just freaking out over seeing Santa. And I still feel a little bad that the parents weren't the ones who got to open the door.
Yeah.
That always kind of bothered me.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, though, I didn't have to do it too often because Santa's elves are pretty on it. It's just kind of chaotic over in the pros, you know. So yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah, I noticed. Oh no, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You good?
I was gonna say, I see a lot of that kind of stuff, even just like, you know, visiting somewhere like this. The last time I was actually at Sesame Place was a couple years ago, and it was what I wanted to do was really like observe more than experience everything myself, and it's just so. It's a very emotional thing to just sit and watch, you know, people and kids have just the best time ever, and just remember being in their shoes in that same position, and being able to do something like that every day or almost every day or that often, that had to have just changed your perspective on things outside of work, I would imagine.
A little bit, yeah. It's interesting because I have always been really into theme park entertainment, and I've always been really into family theater, just because my interests are very intermediate. You know, I love Disney movies. I love Sesame Street. Like,
it's good.
I just love it.
No,
so
that's great.
I was pretty aware of it, but actually being able to do it, you're right, just left. It opened a door that I didn't know existed into how the world operates and works. And thankfully, you know, so often we have to open doors in life, and those doors are scary and swampy and gross. But once in a while, you get to open the door and you see a glimmer or a rainbow or a blue sky. And you have to count those doors. Those are the doors that you have to remember to open and keep unlocked. You know, so very thankful for those kind of doors.
Yeah.
Yeah. I gotta hang now. Anyway.
Well, now I think it's time for some speed questions. What do you think, Sky?
Yeah.
I'm ready.
All right, so these are just gonna be some generic questions.
Yeah.
You can answer around and however you want. However.
I'm ready.
So first question: who is your favorite Muppet and why?
Muppet? Like in general?
Sesame Street Muppet.
Sesame Muppet.
Whoa.
We'll narrow it down a little bit.
Yeah, let's narrow it down a bit.
Because generally, I will say, favorite Muppet is Gonzo. I love that guy. I am him.
What is he?
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. Gosh, the best. But Sesame, it's still complicated. When I was a little kid, Baby Bear.
Oh.
Loved him. He was very prominent in the Sesame Street live show that I saw. So I remembered him. Or I remember him being fairly prominent. But currently, working with my friends, it's a really hard decision between Big Bird and Count Von Count. I genuinely don't think I could pick.
Yeah.
I love those guys. Big Bird is such... Big Bird. He is such a soft and genuine character. And what I love about him is that he says that he's upset he says he's mad. He tells kids that it's okay to be upset. It's okay to not know why. It's okay to make a mistake. But he's still known as a loving and sweet character. And you as a human can be upset or make mistakes or cry about something or even be mad about something and still be a good person. And I think that lesson is so good to teach. And Big Bird is just so sweet and caring, and Carol Spinney just comes right out of him in those older videos. And of course it's Matt Vogel now, right? Who also does a wonderful job with him. But gosh, what a good guy. And then, and he's so sweet. I mean, Big Bird, whenever I'm hanging out with Big Bird, the people that come to him are just so like, it calms them down to meet Big Bird. Yeah. And I love being a part of that. That boy, he's a good guy. And then, of course, Count Von Count. First of all, best Sesame Street songs. He has a cape, very dapper. The Countess is basically him in drag. It's just the best. He's an icon. I love him. And he's purple, which is my favorite color. And he can waltz, and he has bats. And he's so funny and just so like old man, like, oh, okay. You know, like it's so good. Like there's so much chaos. And if he's not causing the chaos, he's just like, all right, hello. Yeah.
And I would imagine spending so much time with them, it makes it a lot harder to pick a favorite.
It really does. Yeah. Because every day you're learning something new. And I'll never forget one day I was hanging with my pal Cookie Monster, and while we were just hanging out, someone came up to us and said, little kid came up and said, hey Cookie Monster, do you remember the video game where you ate a light bulb and you went, yeah, that was really funny, right? And Cookie Monster was like, yeah, that was great.
For sure.
There's so much Sesame media out there to take in and consume. Like it is never ending, the stuff that you find. So I'm always looking for new videos and looking for new things.
Well, hey, that's part of the reason that we did the podcast even at the beginning, because it's a specific thing, and because it's a niche we just know a lot about. I think technically everything could have its own fleshed out show, because
I agree.
There's so much everything.
Yeah, people like me love, having these type of podcasts to listen to while cleaning the room or making breakfast or whatever.
Right.
So I appreciate that. Okay, sorry, this was a lightning round, and I am not.
No, it is it's a slow drizzle round.
Yeah, there you go.
All right,
so
next question.
Have you since, I know you said you didn't watch the show when you were younger, but have you watched it since, or do you?
Oh yeah.
Have you been interested in watching it? Okay. So then, the next question will work of what is your favorite memory or favorite segment or something specifically from the show, from Sesame Street?
Oh.
Do you have a favorite?
I have to bring my head into that place. The first thing that comes to mind, if we're just talking shows, is I love, like, around the 90s, there's a bunch of episodes with Telly Monster just being Telly Monster. And there are some really great bits there. With him talking to Maria about things. Nothing in particular is coming to mind. The best memory that I really remember is going to Sesame Street Live and getting to watch that with my mom and really just taking that in. And I also had this cassette tape. Yeah, cassette tape.
That's about right,
yeah. And it was like Guy Smiley. It was mostly Guy Smiley, and it was some sort of show or game show that he was hosting, and I really ate that up as a kid. I really enjoyed that one. So yeah, I guess I don't have a proper moment, but what really stands out for me is the music.
Yeah.
Sing a song. Don't worry if it's not good enough for anyone else to hear. Does it get better than that?
No.
I'm also here in the middle of imagination, right in the middle of my mind. That is beautiful. And then I close my eyes, and the night is and the wind is warm and fair. What is it? There's a line in there about and the things that I lose I find. come on, Joe. What is it? Joe Rapsco that wrote that
Joe
stuff?
Raposo.
Joe
Raposo, yeah.
Raposo. I mean,
Great,
what a
yeah.
genius. And
What-
his simplicity of how he went about that. Like,
Yeah.
he could have gone really hard into it, but he didn't. He chose very easy to understand words for a preschooler to know that
Oh, yeah.
many adults listen to and just gush over.
And you know what? He could write stuff so quickly. I mean,
That's what
he could leave the room and come back like 10 minutes later and have, you
he
know,
was set.
being green. And it's like just some iconic song out of nowhere.
Right. And suddenly Frank Sinatra's like, hey, be my best friend.
I'll do it.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which he liked. He was really into celebrities. He probably would have had a great talk show. That could have been really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of asking what your favorite memory is, because I feel like you went over that.
Yeah.
Tell us about the Give Kids the World
Yeah.
and your experience or your involvement, or tell us about that.
Yeah. So I thank you so much for bringing it up. I asked before we started if I could talk about that because I also have some wonderful character memories working there.
Oh, awesome.
So if you're okay with it, can I tell you about it?
Absolutely.
Please do. Yeah.
Give Kids the World is a magical place in Central Florida. And we always need volunteers. Essentially, do you guys know Make-A-Wish?
Yes.
The Make-A-Wish Foundation, they get a lot of wishes for families to come to Orlando and experience Disney or Universal,
Right.
SeaWorld. And essentially the story was there was this wonderful man named Henry Landsworth. He was unfortunately a survivor of the Holocaust. He survived the Holocaust. Unfortunately, he saw his mother and father get shot. And he really felt that he lost his childhood because of his experience doing that. He was able to escape. A man was about to shoot him, and the man told him to run. And he ran. And he ran, and he ran. Eventually was able to escape Germany, came to America, started in the hotel business, working his way up. Later on, became the owner of several, I think it was Holiday Inns, hotel franchises. Did that. Had a bunch of hotels in the Orlando area, very close to Disney World. Make-A-Wish asked if he could put kids up in his hotel rooms for free, because it's their wish. And he would always say yes, because he felt that he lost his childhood. One day there was this little girl who had a wish to go to Disney World. And unfortunately, Henry said, I can't get her in this week, can we get her in next week? They said, sure, and the little girl passed away before she could get her wish. That bothered Henry so much that he created Give Kids the World Village, where he would never have to say no to another critically ill child. And it just started as a few villas for the families to live at, and our gingerbread house, which was kind of like a food cafeteria place. When families visit us, they don't pay for anything. They get free food, they get free tickets to the parks, they get everything. But then Henry realized that the parks are very exhausting and getting to Orlando is very exhausting. We should have attractions. So with the help of a lot of corporate sponsors, we put in a beautiful Castle of Miracles where kids make a star and we put that star on the ceiling where it will stay forever. And we have a fabulous carousel, it's a 100-year-old carousel that's from the Netherlands. And we have an ice cream shop, and we have, we have an ice cream parlor, and we have an arcade. And then he said, let's put this, and let's put that, and let's put rides over there. We can put rides over there. And some corporate sponsors said, yeah, we'll pay for those rides. And suddenly we created a village called Give Kids the World Village. And it is the most magical place in the entire world, where we take several Make-A-Wish kids and give them the best vacation ever. And you can volunteer at the village, and I volunteered there for quite some time. And actually now I work there, which has been lovely.
Okay.
But we're always looking for volunteers to make ice cream. We need people to help run the attractions. We need people to help in our character program. So if you are ever in Central Florida and want to try something different, I highly recommend you volunteer with Give Kids the World Village. And one of my favorite memories volunteering was we have a little bunny rabbit who roams the village, and his name is Mayor Clayton. And Mayor Clayton is actually the mayor of our village.
Oh my God.
I love him so much. He's the sweetest guy. And Mayor Clayton was actually created by SeaWorld. He was
Full circle.
technically a Shamu and crew character that they created for us. Over time, I think we wanted a girl character as well. So Miss Mary was created, and she is Mayor Clayton's husband who loves to bake cookies and things. And Disney actually had some Easter Bunny costumes available. And then Disney helped us bring
Wow.
to life. And the Claytons are brought to life all the time, and they roam the village and make kids happy. Rabbits represent hope, as you know. And one of my jobs as a volunteer at Give Kids was being a character performer, because that's what I knew. So I help out Mayor Clayton, or used to help out before I work there now. And we have made the best memories with kids.
Wow.
Being at Give Kids the World, I've also been at Give Kids the World with my pal Cookie Monster, who makes visits to Give Kids.
Oh, really?
Donates a team member, or I think we're called ambassadors at SeaWorld. They'll donate an ambassador and a few dancers, and Cookie Monster goes to SeaWorld and jams out during Mayor Clayton's birthday party. And that's really special too. And the hugs that you get our Give Kids are so special. Earlier I talked about, getting those hugs from mom and dad. And sometimes a hug from Mayor Clayton or a hug from Cookie Monster is the last thing that just makes them melt in your arms. And the amount of sincere thank yous I've been able to hear performing with those characters at Give Kids the World is unlike anything else. One of those kids that made a huge impact on Mayor Clayton was named Zachary. And Zachary was a regular guest at Give Kids. He had his own struggles that he was handling, but he loved helping out. And we have these little parties and things, and he was very insistent on helping out with the parties and was just so sweet and such a wonderful guest for us. Someone decided to make Zachary a honorary mayor of Give Kids the World, and they gave him a little name tag. And something that all of our staff members do is they go to graduation, which is where they get to meet Mayor Clayton. We shake him by the hand and we give him rabbit ears and we say, "Welcome to the team." I was volunteering as Mayor Clayton for this event. I go in ready to see a bunch of adults and shake hands and get out of there. And there's Zachary sitting in his little electric green wheelchair. And I'm thinking, okay, there's a kid, so I guess I should focus on him. Zachary turns out to be the biggest personality I have ever met. He is so sweet and so just wanting hugs and so had so many questions about Mayor Clayton. He was like, "This is the coolest thing ever." And then there was a reception afterwards, and I remember we went outside and Zachary wheeled himself out of there and said, "We need carrots for Mayor Clayton. We need carrots for him right now. He's very hungry." I was like, oh my gosh. We go and sit down, and Zachary the whole time is like, "This is the coolest thing ever. I get to meet Mayor Clayton and all this stuff." Well, anyway, we have the best meet and greet, and that was probably the best meet and greet I've ever had in my entire life. And I got to spend about 15 minutes, maybe even 20 minutes just with him. And after Zachary, I can't exactly tell you how, but my world will never be the same. You think about terminal illness and what the effects it has on family members. It's not just Zach that was going through things. It was his brothers and his sisters who Mayor Clayton got to hug individually. And with every hug, you felt this sense of gratitude that was like pixie dust going over you. And then it was time for Mayor Clayton to go. He left. But he always remembered Zachary. Funny enough, that meet and greet was how I got hired at Give Kids. Somebody said we need to hire him.
Oh, really?
And that's how I started working at Give Kids.
Wow.
Mayor Clayton then got to meet Zachary in several different places, as he was now the honorary mayor of Give Kids the World next to Mayor Clayton.
Great.
And that character was performed by several different people. Unfortunately, we lost Zachary fairly recently. And I got to meet his mother. And I explained who I was and explained how wonderful Zach was. And she just gave me the biggest hug and said, you know, because he went and visited other characters and things, and she said he really wasn't a character person, but he loved Mayor Clayton. And he was always curious about what Mayor was doing. Now, Mayor Clayton doesn't have a TV show. He doesn't have a magazine. He has a stuffed animal. That's about it.
Right.
But because of volunteers like myself and other fabulous volunteers, we made him become alive. And Zachary asked so many wonderful questions and created Mayor's own world in his head. And that's really what we're here to do, to let these kids create their own stories with these characters that live on forever. And I don't know exactly how to say it, but after that interaction, I don't think I'll ever be the same. There's so many horrible things in the world. There's so many horrible things that we can't understand. But once in a while, there are places for people to heal. Whether that be at SeaWorld or at Give Kids the World, whether you be in a hospital or a theater, we can all heal each other. And we can do it through music and characters and chalk and bubbles. And you don't need to be in this position. You don't need to go to these crazy auditions and do these crazy dances. You can volunteer and be at Give Kids the World.
Well, we'll be sure to put all their information in the description if anyone wants to
Absolutely.
Look into them or volunteer.
It's
have this picture.
Yeah, there's Mayor and this Mayor. It goes into what I was saying. Don't worry if it's not good enough for anyone else to hear. Just sing a song. That appeals. That is huge. And it goes farther than just singing. Yeah, there's Miss Mary. So thank you so much for your time today, guys. I hope I didn't take up too much talking about Give Kids to the Sesame podcast, but I figured there must be some mixed in interest there.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
My buddy Mayor. So yeah, and Sesame is just such a great brand, and I'm so happy there are people like you that want to talk more about it. So thank you.
Thank you for being here and spending time and telling your stories. I mean, this is what it's about. This is why we want to do it, because we just think it's a great way. And Neil, you can give your thoughts on the same thing, but I feel like we agree. This is such a great way to document this not only the history of these places, but just the stories that can, in some way, they can exist out there, and they can come from you and from the people themselves.
And it's also important to highlight people like you, because some people don't know who you are. You deserve the spotlight. You really do. You do good work. You do great work, and you deserve all the praise. You really do. This is what this podcast is for. This is what we wanted to do. We wanted to highlight the talented individuals like yourself and just give you a platform to just share your story and spread the word on foundations and the great places where you're working at now. And I'm just so honored to have you here and hear everything. And now I know about this wonderful place. I want to visit. I want to help out. I want to volunteer any way I can.
Yeah, I'm surprised I hadn't heard about it before, but what a great way to hear about it. What a great introduction.
It is the best, worst kept secret in Orlando. We try to get it out there, but please, if you're in the area, first of all, let me know so I can say hi. We'll go to, Starbucks.
For sure.
But
absolutely.
But also, please, we need ice cream scoopers. We can get you, maybe we can, we have all sorts of wonderful programs to get you a part of Give Kids, and so many ways that you will be able to make magic for our awesome families. You can run a carousel. How great is that? We'll train you.
That'll be amazing. Right.
It's fun. It's a fun time.
The opportunities are there, guys.
The opportunities are there. Look for them. And they're probably available in your hometown too. There's all sorts of wonderful nonprofits out there that you can look for that do very similar work. I'm from Buffalo, New York, and we have the Police Athletic League and the Herschel Carousel Museum and all these wonderful nonprofits that, you can make your own magic. And it doesn't have to be with these big copywritten characters. You don't have to be a party princess and only work with certain characters. You can make magic by just your being you.
Yes.
You are empowered. And I'm so excited to get to hear more stories about Sesame Street Live. Obviously, as we talked about earlier, I had to follow some rules when talking about my pals at Sesame because I'm not done working.
Right.
Right.
I mean, I'm so excited to hear these stories about people who've gotten to work for Sesame Street Live or Sesame Place and hear their stories. And
Yeah.
I really look forward to seeing all this stuff happen.
Yes, guys, there's going to be things coming. Great people just like Alex. We have some good things coming, and I hope you all stay tuned for sure.
Absolutely.
Good. Well, thank you, guys.
This has been another episode. Yes, thank you so much, Alex. This has been another episode of Sesame Street Spectacle. I am Neil.
I'm Sky.
And I'm Alex.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much, Alex, for joining us. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. See you later, guys.
See you guys.
Bye.